Hi everybody, and welcome to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. On this video, I've got a post from entitled parents with an update. One from Am I the A-hole and one from Today I Effed Up. So if you want to get started with the stories, then just use the timestamps below the video. Now I'd like to thank all of you that support me and my channel. Thank you very much, your support means a lot to me. And if this is the first time watching one of my videos and you like it, then consider subscribing to the channel and joining us on Discord. Now let's get started with today's stories. This post is from the subreddit entitled Parents, and it's by user Lisa Skadel. My father sued my sister for my mother's house. A bit of backstory. My parents got divorced 33 years ago. Oh, and at the time they both owned several houses. When they separated their assets, my mother got the home she lives in now, and my father got the home he lives in now. But he tried to still take the home she lives in by not paying the mortgage and not telling her he hadn't paid the mortgage. Had it not been for my godfather loaning my mom the money to get the payments up to date, my father would have put my mother and his 3 kids out on the street. Fast forward 28 years later. My father owned his own business and he was looking for someone to buy it, and so my sister offered to buy it from him. They agreed on a price and signed the contract. Now, here's the rub. The business was actually a business that was losing customers because it's a dying industry, and my father never told my sister that. My sister is one of the hardest workers I know, and she put everything she had into this business, and nothing she was doing was working. And that wasn't because she wasn't doing the right thing, it was because the business in and of itself was a dying medium for that industry. During the course of all this, after my father had finally retired, they got into an argument about a financial matter in dealing with the company, and my father was completely disrespectful in the way he handled it towards my sister, and he did that in front of her employees. My sister stopped talking to him at that point. Over the next couple of months, despite my sister's extensive hard work, the company went under and my sister had to close the business after it had been open for 38 years. My sister was devastated by this because not only did she put all of her hard work, her blood, sweat, and tears into it, but she also put all of her financial resources, which meant that she was financially devastated as well. My father was upset because the company that he had created and nurtured over 38 years had been closed through, what he saw as no fault of his own. Clearly, because the business closed, my sister could not continue to pay my dad for his business. Then, she found out that the business had already been dying. In fact, my father had taken money out of his own account to put into the business because he knew it was dying when he sold it to her. He literally scammed his own daughter in the sale, for lack of a better word of saying it. Because she stopped paying him, he decided that he was going to sue her in court with a judge and everything. Now, for context. A few years before all of this happened, my mom had gotten sick and gone to the hospital, and at the time I lived across the country and my brother lived across the country, and the only one who lived in the same state was my sister. My mother was afraid that if something happened to her, we wouldn't get the house, so she put the house in my sister's name since my sister lived the closest. The house was still in my mother's name as well, but my sister's name was added to it. After my mom got out of the hospital, she never got around to changing it. So, when my father started threatening to sue my sister, he went through her assets and realized that my mother's house was still in her name and switched it back over to just my mother's name. In our state, however, we have a law that if you think someone fraudulently switches an asset out of their name in order to avoid being sued for it, you can sue them for that asset still, and it's up to them to prove that it wasn't fraudulently transferred. So, when my father decided to sue my sister, he added my mother's house to the lawsuit as one of the things he wanted. He didn't sue my sister for the house that she owns in her name with her husband in a whole nother city. He sued for a house she hasn't lived in over 25 years and a house that she has not put any money into ever in her life. Now, when he first filed the suit, I thought he was just trying to force my sister to talk to him because I couldn't imagine any parent, let alone my parents, actually suing their child. But he actually went through with it. He initially told me that he was suing for my mother's house because the lawyer told him he had to sue for all of her assets, and since my mother's house had been in her name, he had to sue for that as well as her house. But then I found out he wasn't suing her for her house. He was suing her only for my mother's house. He's still mad that he didn't get my mother's house 33 years ago when they got a divorce. So mad that he lost in that case that he decided to go after her house the first chance he got. And this was it, 33 years later. The even more messed up thing is that when I found out he was going after my mother's house, I myself told him, if you go through with this lawsuit and you win my mother's house and you take her house away from her, I will never forgive you. I will never talk to you again. You will lose me, and losing me will also mean you lose your grandchild, your only grandchild. So you need to think about whether or not this is worth it to you. And he still went through with it. He still went through with it knowing that he would not only lose my sister, but me as well. He filed this lawsuit 5 years ago and they just got through going to court. So for the last 5 years, he's forced his daughter, his princess, his baby girl, to suffer under the weight of knowing that her father, A, screwed her over, and B, was putting money before her, and C, apparently felt no remorse or sadness to hurting his own child, emotionally, mentally, and financially. The worst part is he didn't just teach her that. He taught all 3 kids with this one act. He did all of this because he thinks that even though he got everything in the divorce, with the exception of primary custody of us kids and that one house, that he is entitled to take my mom's house after 33 years of her living there, putting all of her time and energy into making it a home for us kids, and putting her own money into improving it, and her paying off the mortgage on her own as a single mother while raising 3 teenage children on what would be considered poverty wages today. We grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. He hasn't put a dime into that property since 1988, and yet he somehow feels like he's entitled to take it away from my mother, without even caring about the damage it would do to his own children. I just can't stop thinking, what kind of sick F sues their own kid? Well, we can definitely sense that by the way that OP writes about her father in this situation, that she is incredibly angry at him and frustrated with all of this. It is sad to see that he would go after this house considering that he got everything else, according to what OP has been telling us. But what I think is the worst part of this whole story is that he would scam his own daughter and then sue her. That just screams you suck, man. First of all, selling a dying dud to anyone sucks. But to your own kid? And then sue her when she can't make the payments you had agreed upon by selling her a dud? I don't know what the reasons for the divorce were or why he wants that house so badly. That's beside the point for me. For me, what sucks is that he's suing her kid and scammed her. That sucks. What do you guys think? What's your opinion on this whole situation? Let me know in the comment section. And now, let's move on with the update to see what happened after this. A lot of people here have said that my sister needed to do her due diligence in examining the business. My sister did examine all of the business records for the last 10 years, and she had a lawyer go over the contract with a fine-tooth comb. It wasn't a matter of her not doing her due diligence. It was a matter of the business records that she was given were very different from the business records that held the actual information necessary. For lack of a better way to say it, he cooked the books. And for those wondering the outcome, she actually did file a countersuit for him selling her a business that was unviable. She was able to prove in court that the business was failing before he sold it to her, and that the equipment he sold her was equipment he had bought 20 years ago and was no longer usable when it came to the technology of today. Also, I was already pretty sure that no jury worth their salt would give him a house that my sister never put a dime in and that hadn't lived in for over 25 years, especially when he wasn't going after any of her other assets. I was right. When they got to the court, my sister told the judge and the jury that she didn't want anything from him in her countersuit. She didn't want the money, she didn't want anything from him, but for this to be over. He told the court and the jury that he just wanted my mother's house in lieu of the $300,000 my sister owed him for the business. My father lost his lawsuit. My sister won her lawsuit and was given $0 as that's what she was asking for. So he permanently lost one daughter, and the other one, myself, is seriously questioning whether or not I want to talk to him ever again. Over the last 10 years, I've maintained a relationship with my father, not because it's what he wanted, but because it's what I wanted. Now, I just don't know if that's something I want anymore. I don't know if I want to be around the kind of person that would sue his own child. Okay, so now we know that Opie's dad effectively scammed his daughter by cooking the books and giving her false financial information in order to get her to sign a contract that was worth a lot more than the company actually was. That's a sucky move in itself. But then on top of that, he sued his daughter when she couldn't make the payments because the business had failed. Man, and all of this for one house. Like, how petty do you have to be, or how big of a grudge? I really wonder what happened in that divorce, that he had to take it this long and actually lose his daughters over it. Priorities and life choices. I guess he's got different ones than me. Anyways, we now move on to the next post. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole, and it's from user GodioPJ. Am I the a-hole for not punishing my daughter after she refused to watch her cousin and something bad happened? My sister has a 1.5-year-old son. Ever since he was born, she's tried to get my 14-year-old daughter to babysit as she wants them to be close, even though they're so far apart in age. My daughter has declined as she doesn't want the responsibility of someone else's kid, especially if something were to go wrong. My sister doesn't get it, despite multiple people, myself and my daughter including, telling her. Yesterday, we were at our parents' house for a barbecue. It was mostly adults with a few children varying in ages, but my nephew was the youngest. All throughout the barbecue, my sister kept trying to get my daughter to hold him or feed him, which my daughter declined. At one point, I went in the house to help my aunt and mom with drinks and sides. 15 minutes later, I hear my sister shrieking. I rush outside and she's holding her baby, whose face is bleeding. Her husband is nearby, trying to take the baby to administer first aid. My sister is shrieking at my daughter to put her damn phone down and you're in a lot of trouble. My daughter looks terrified. Finally, brother-in-law takes the baby and goes to tend to him. I get both sides. My sister went inside to pee, asking my daughter to watch her son. My daughter said, "No, ask your husband." My sister says she told her to just help out and it won't kill you. My daughter flat out told her no, and my sister left knowing my daughter was looking at her phone. The yard was filled with adults, all of whom say they were keeping an eye on the little one, but at some point they lost track. My parents have concrete steps leading to their backyard. Somehow nephew tried to walk up them, tripped and scratched his face. He was fine in the end, just a few scrapes. My sister kept demanding I take my daughter's phone and asked what I'd do to punish her. I said nothing because she said she wasn't watching her cousin and there were half a dozen adults who should have been watching him, as specifically his father. Brother-in-law even admits that it's on him and he screwed up, but my sister kept blaming my daughter. We left right then and I told my daughter several times in front of the family and alone that it's not her fault. My sister is still mad at me and my mom says I should have daughter apologize. I said no, she did nothing wrong. My mom says that it wouldn't have killed my daughter to watch him for 2 seconds. Am I being an ass? No, OP, you are not the a-hole. Your sister is. My skeptical guess is that she's trying to force this relationship between your daughter and her son so she can get some free babysitting or at least cheap babysitting in the nearby future. She asked your daughter to take care of her son. Your daughter said no because she doesn't feel up to the responsibility. She left anyways. The boy's father was there. How is this your daughter's fault? Your sister is just dense. And as a side note, why does your mom think she gets to have an opinion about what your daughter should or not should be doing? I don't recall you saying that you asked your mom how she felt about this thing, so it doesn't really matter what she says. What do you guys think? Let me know your opinion in the comments section, and now let's go take a look at the community comments to see their judgment. Holy effing Nuggets says, "Not the a-hole, and good for you for standing up for your daughter. Really happy that your nephew is okay. It really sounds like sister-in-law is trying to force your daughter into doing something she was uncomfortable with. Daughter had already repeatedly said no, one of her reasons being, what if something bad happens? And guess what? She was proved right. No, it would not have killed her to keep an eye out, but it was also not her responsibility." Mountain Goat 05 says, "Not the a-hole. Your daughter has been very clear that she doesn't want to babysit. I think it's awesome that you're backing her up and advocating for her. Your sister is a huge a-hole for not taking no for an answer." Purple Mars Alien says, "Not the a-hole. As the kid who was forced to step up and watch all the other damn kids my whole life, your daughter explicitly stated she was not taking over supervision. Your sister is an a-hole to continue pushing it and further an a-hole to reject her husband's responsibility here." So the community absolutely agrees that OP is not the a-hole and the sister is. And they're all really happy that OP stood up for her daughter, which I think is also fantastic. So now, let's move on to the next post. This post is from the subreddit Today I Effed Up, and it's from user Mr. Big Dude. Today I effed up by not knowing how to boil water. We are on vacation in a rented house. Some relatives dropped in to visit us. My wife wanted to offer them tea, so she handed me a kettle and asked me to boil some water. I filled it in the kitchen sink. Then I put the kettle on one of the burners on the range and turned the flame on under it. A minute or two later, an acrid burning smell started to fill the kitchen. My wife realized what was happening, darted to the range and turned off the burner, but she was too late to save the electric kettle. That's right. It was the kind that was an internal heating mechanism and sits on a plugged-in base. The outside of the kettle was scorched and the electronics inside were definitely fried. As a result, I've just returned from Bed Bath & Beyond, $50 poorer, but hopefully a little wiser. I don't drink hot beverages, so I didn't know there was such a thing as an electric kettle for boiling water, but I sure know now. Well, OP, I guess it's never too late to learn. Or, I don't know, what about on this case? That's just odd that you've never seen an electric kettle before, but I guess I'll take your word for it. Good thing is, lesson learned, right? And it's that time that we've reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I certainly did reading them to you. So if you did, then go ahead and give the video a like. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and become a member of our Discord community that just keeps growing, and it is fantastic. And like I said in the beginning of the video, all of the relevant links are in the video description below, so be sure to check them out. And finally, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. It really does mean a lot to me that you guys enjoy this content, so thank you once again. And having said all that, I will see you guys in the next video.